Brian, oh Brian, he should be home from school by now. That little Dickens, I never know what he's up to. And after a lifetime, Mom again says, honey, what can we do for Brian? Often, we didn't know. Brian, you are complicated, but aren't we all? You searched for keys to make sense of the frustrating and fascinating world around you. You found music, definitive logic, intellectual, deadpan, cynical humor, and public service. We are here to celebrate you. Karina's heart is broken and exhausted. Papa, I miss you. Thank you for sharing your life with me. You didn't want to need help. Often you were unaware of how much help you truly needed, and on occasion, with tears, said, "Thank you for helping me." It was my greatest honor and privilege. Rest in peace, Papa. And Carl misses you and especially remembers your humor. As you said last night, speaking to my great-grandmother, my dad once joked that older people get more religious because they're closer to the payoff. I hope you're enjoying your payoff, Dad. Our cousin Hunter Trunk says, we should remember his sense of humor. It was unique, unsubtle, and often a poke to see what response he would elicit from others. My dad and I were talking with him once about last wishes. In typical Brian fashion, he said, "Well, I won't be using my body at that point, so I just suggest you don't bother claiming it." Well, we tried not claiming it. Somebody found it and called the paramedics. Your successors were not happy. So we have your ashes here for honorable, reverent, and lovingly irreverent memory. To someone else, when the subject came up, Brian said, "Just try dynamite." As I share my memories of Brian, I encourage your memories. Enjoy them, and where needed, pray for healing. Join me on a walk down the yellow brick road of memory lane. Nancy and John, Connie and Tim, Tom and Roseanne, myself and John, Marlene, Karina and Ted, Carl and Juliana, Elena, Gabriel and Gabriel, and Carl. Each of us is a gift by being who we truly are. And of course, that's a lifelong journey. Each of us has our own experiences of our family and of being related to Brian. The fact that our experiences are different is not unusual and does not make any of us wrong. It gives us the invitation to love and understand each other with more compassion. The resurrected Jesus still bears his wounds. He invites us to see and touch his wounds in the sufferings we all share. Our redemption does not hide our wounds. Redemption reveals our wounds as the places where God's transforming love can enter, where we can be seen and touched and loved first, just as we are. Unfortunately, we often use our religion to paint over our brokenness and to give a show of holiness before the work is done. Not Brian. He'd see right through it. His spiritual journey was always happening. But he would see right through a word I'm not going to say in church. Do you remember Church Lady from Saturday Night Live? She's threatening me from one side. Brian is inspiring me from the other. Imparting knowledge and giving definite opinions are part of Brian's nature. I don't argue. I explain. I could agree with you, but then both of us would be wrong. The first thing I remember him teaching me was the alphabet before I went to kindergarten. He had just graduated from first grade, so he had his teacher's credential. We sat on the bedroom floor with crayons and drawing paper. He guided me in the formation of each letter, the capital and the small. Brian was a skilled driver, an inquisitive scientist, and a man of music and song. Brian gave me driving lessons. Riding with Brian was a cross between Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and the Tomorrowland rocket jets. One day the lesson was how to burn rubber. Another day, recovering from a spin-out. To inaugurate a new section of road, he took me at 90 miles an hour down the new extension of Eddinger Avenue through what used to be an orange grove in our hometown of Santa Ana, California. Dinner conversation that night somehow ended up talking about how crazily people drive. I said in front of Mom and Dad, "You know, I have seen drivers on that new section of Eddinger Avenue going at least 90 miles an hour." We communicated with facial gestures. You really got to watch Brian's face. It's in the eyebrows, in the eyes, all together. We loved making faces, especially so Mom and Dad didn't know what we were saying. Brian installed a loudspeaker under the hood of his car. He made corrective comments to drivers and pedestrians. From the Kmart parking lot, across the street from our high school, he would call out jaywalking students. "Hey, you! Yes, you! Jaywalking is against the law. Use the crosswalk." He loved it. It was candid camera without a camera. Brian was naturally drawn to being a public safety inspector. Brian's hunger for knowledge led to careful science experiments. There was an early 20th century gas valve in the girl's bedroom. Dad had not been able to find the right cap to cut off that valve. So he wrapped it with layer after layer of tape and paint. Well, when Brian noticed that unsafe situation, his imagination was fired up. We unwrapped those layers of tape and paint. We took a big dry cleaner's bag, inflated it, tied off the bottom, and we processed through the living room, full of guests, some of whom were smoking. But we made it out to the street to watch in fascination the ascent. Other scientific endeavors included fire projects. What would burn? Small explosives. We loved explosives. Many stories about that. And fireworks. I love that he became a firework inspector. And Brian's chemistry set. So Brian was already burnishing his future firefighter credentials. Brian's happy place was music, sharing his basso profundo voice. As a new music major, he was the first person to introduce me to music that I could actually like. Until I was about 17, I didn't think there was any music I would ever want to listen to. He played me a piece by Bach, and I was taken. He would take me to concerts and help me understand the flow of the music by discerning the sound of each instrument as it played its part. During one of our last conversations, Brian was complaining to me about how stupid people are. I said, Brian, I think your brain is wired differently from most people's brains. You understand and feel things in a different way. Along with being a gift, I imagine the cost has been loneliness and pain. And he glanced at me with facial agreement. He expressed himself with playful literalism and brutal logic. Brian, how do you feel? Brian, what's up? Using his definitive logic, he wrote in a note to Karina, something of which I have heard a great deal from some people. Either I like it or I don't like it. I like it and I don't like it have precisely no effect on the chemical properties of materials. They are good or bad because they are, not because I like them or don't like them. So take your cod liver oil. It's good for the brain. Liking it or not liking it has nothing to do with its inherent properties. Oh my. Visiting Brian could be like an audience with the great Oz. Will I be welcomed or humiliated? Along with the three companions at Dorothy, whose name means gift from God, Brian too walked a path of longing, of coming to know what he needed. And in the process, as God reveals gifts, we realize, wow, so much of that has been with me all along. So how can we clear out the brain straw, the poor scarecrow who is straw, looked for a brain? How can we clear our own brain straw that separates us from understanding and accepting ourselves with greater compassion? And with the Tin Man who hungered for a new heart, how do we cut off the deepest longings we hide in our hearts? And with the lion who tried to be a bully, or was a bully, but what is a bully? An insecure person looking for acceptance. And how can we pull back the curtains from our own bluffing? And some final words of wisdom from Brian. Last week of work is okay. I thought I would have stopped bothering to do anything productive by now, still plugging away. I have a lieutenant trained to do most of the work I used to do, with public assembly venues, fireworks display outfits, and various types of outdoor events. I helped him understand important philosophical considerations that will help him with whatever he needs to learn to do. Number one, if you don't, okay, church lady, I can't use Brian's word. If you don't mess people around, most of them are very easy to deal with. Be reasonable. Be aware that people who do things generally know more about those things than the person with the job of regulating such activities. Those three take care of most situations not involving a sociopath. If you find you are dealing with a sociopath, go away and come back with the company of officer friendly. Even sociopaths respond well to the taser and the matching bracelets. I think I will adjust well to retirement. I think I can deal with not going to work. I haven't worked with the fire department long enough to hate it, but I have done it long enough that I won't really miss it. The brawl at Katie Downs is a retirement party. Feel free to come if you wish. Don't worry if you don't. We can celebrate another time. Well, Brian, this is another time. This is another retirement, and we trust God is completing the work begun when God knit you together in our mother's womb.